Alrighty, and we are live just a couple of minutes before the scheduled start for Roland Garros for 2020. Just thought I'd do a little quick preview show, just about 10 minutes or so, just before the day's play gets underway. Having a little bit of a look here, obviously I've got the weather up here on the screen, and it's not looking fantastic in terms of getting a lot of tennis underway for the first Sunday of the tournament. Now, it looks like we have a top of 15 degrees Celsius, and looking at the hour by hour split across the day, it looks like there's a fair chance of a fair amount of rain, and we may not get too much action on the outside courts for today, which means we will get to see the new retractable roof in play on centre court for the 4 matches that we have there. And it looks like it's going to be 4 pretty interesting matches to get things underway. If we just have a quick look, what I thought I'd just quickly do here is give a bit of a summary, obviously, of where my selections have gone for the outrights for both the men's and the women's for the entire tournament. So quickly summarize them and have a little bit of a look at what's on offer for today from a preview standpoint, and then what's still to come, because there still are a couple of previews that I will be finishing off after I jump off here. So obviously a bit of rain on the way, so I guess patience is probably going to be the order of the day today in terms of what's going to happen on the outside courts. Conditions are going to be heavy. We already know, we've seen a lot of players talk about how heavy these balls are and how much effort it's actually going to take to hit hard for an extended period of time. So it'll be interesting to see some of these players slug it out over 3, 4, 5 sets for today. So just having a quick look at basically a summary of my preview on the Betfair Hub. On the men's side, I've ended up going with Novak Djokovic at his current price. I think is a better value than Nadal and Thiem in particular. Obviously, he's been given quite a generous draw in comparison to a lot of the other players that we have taking the court in Paris. So he's sitting around that $3 mark at the moment, which I think looks to be value, given how the draws panned out. Looking at some more back to lay suggestions in some of the other quarters. So obviously I've avoided Djokovic in that first quarter because I think, outside of Khachanov or Bautista Agut having a real blinder, I don't see anyone getting too close to Novak in these conditions. I mean, he admitted himself he didn't play well in Rome and still took the title there, so he is going to be hard to beat. Diego Schwartzman's obviously one to keep an eye on in the second quarter, and Casper Ruud. I did jump on him before he lost in Hamburg yesterday and after taking a medical timeout for his shoulder, and he has played a lot of tennis, but I think he should be able to get through those first couple of rounds quite well, and I think he's one who could really cause a bit of an upset against Dominic Thiem a little bit later this week. And then some very, very low stake suggestions for quarter 2, which looks to be a little bit wide open, considering we've got Medvedev, Rublev, Shapovalov, a couple of others in there that aren't world beaters on clay and aren't ultra consistent. So maybe even a Monteiro or a Dusan Lajovic is a place you could look there for a trading back to lay suggestion. So I'm not saying they're going to win the tournament. They're just, I think they have the capability with their draw to win a couple of rounds, and their price might come in a little bit. I think looking towards the women's section, it's obviously far more wide open. And I've kind of split this up into a couple of sections here. So obviously, I think the main pick, and a lot of people tend to agree with this one, is Simona Halep to win the French Open. Her form's been exceptional over the last month or so on clay. Obviously, she skipped the North American hard court swing. Her biggest threat, I think, in the top half is Elise Mertens. So she's sitting at $34 at the moment. And look, if they were to meet in a semi-final, which would be fantastic from a betting standpoint, I'd probably look to trade out there if she were to meet Halep. And the other one to keep an eye on is Elena Rybakina. I think she is a good value price here. She did run out of gas a little bit in Strasbourg against Svitolina yesterday, but I'm not too concerned about that one there. One at a bigger price to keep an eye on is Putintseva. We saw her play some pretty solid tennis at the US Open, reaching the quarterfinal. She's made the quarterfinals here before a couple of years ago. She should thrive in the heavy conditions here. She did retire from her match last week with a lower back issue, but it didn't seem to be too bad. So I'm not too concerned there. So she's one to keep an eye on. Iga Swiatek is another one who looks to be a nice price here. I have made the comment in my preview that I think, look, she is an underdog to beat Vondrousova in the first round. So be a little bit careful and don't double dip too much if you're taking the training selection and her to win the tournament in a back to lay situation, just because obviously her price will come in significantly if she were to beat Vondrousova. One to keep an eye on at a bit of a longer price is Marta Kostyuk, who has played really well through qualifying. She was obviously one of those people who really challenged Naomi Osaka at the US Open. I think had triple break point to go up a break in the third set against her there. She rolled her ankle, I think, before she played some of the other clay qualifying tournaments, so didn't play again until Roland Garros qualifying. And although she did have a couple of three-setters, she was pretty dominant through her performances through each of the rounds. So I'm not too worried there. And just down on the bottom right, they've got a couple of players just to monitor over the early stages. And this is the same for a few players. I felt like looking at their outrights, they seem to be an okay price, but they have some real trappy kind of first round meetings. So if you've had a look at my previews for today, I've actually gone for Kovanic to beat Azarenka at $8 or $7.75, which just seemed ridiculously long. Garbine Muguruza falls into the same category. She's below $1.15 tomorrow, I think, against the Dancek. Far too short. I just want to monitor her fitness for the first round before jumping in from an outright perspective. She did look a little bit proppy in her final against Halep in Rome. So that's one I'm just going to be keeping an eye on initially. And another one is Petra Kvitova, who I've mentioned her in a couple of outright previews over the last, or even probably over the last 18 months. I think if she gets to the round of 16 and she finds her way into the second week, then she becomes a really dangerous prospect. My issue with her, particularly at the price she is at the moment, is that it just is so, because it is so wide open, we just don't know what we're going to see. I have genuine concerns about her making it there. I still think she's probably going to be a decent price come the round of 16. And I think if we get her to, the second week playing some matches on the indoor center court, if the weather does still look to be poor, I think she's a genuine chance to take a couple of scalps. So that's where I'm kind of leaning, I guess, looking from an outright point of view for both the men's and the women's. But I'll continue to kind of comment and monitor as we see the first couple of rounds unfold, because there's not a lot of recent form to be able to go off from a Roland Garros perspective, because the conditions are so different this year. The balls are different. Everything's different compared to what we've seen in the past. So it is a little bit up in the air. Now, taking a look at day one overall. Now, I've got 4 selections up on the Betfair Hub on Evans versus Nishikori, Correa versus Jung, Azarenka versus Kovanic, and Teichmann versus Begu. Now, they're all 1.5 to 2 units there. Look, trying to take a mixture of fitness and just general clay form through those matches. And look, as I said before, and I'll mention a little bit, because I think if the rain has held off, that they'll be getting on court shortly. I think Azarenka looks far too short against Kovanic, given the form of both players coming in. Kovanic looked pretty solid over the last couple of weeks. Across, I think it was Istanbul and then last week as well. She's taken a couple of scalps and she's playing some high confidence tennis. Very rarely do I ever get involved with Kovanic when she's a favorite, but when she's over $7, she does play some low percentage tennis, but when it comes off, it can really be quite damaging. So I think she might actually manage the conditions okay here against Azarenka. So fingers crossed for a decent effort from her there. I've popped a preview up on Joanna Konta versus Coco Gauff up on the website, and I can retweet that after I finish on the show here. Still to come for tonight, I've still got previews coming for Putintseva versus Flipkins, Rodionov versus Shardy, Kopfer versus Huang, Yastremska versus Gavrilova, and Stojanovic versus Krejcikova. I've popped up a couple of no-bet match previews for Pair versus Kwon and Goffin versus Sinner. Just to summarize those ones quickly, Benoit Paire is an underdog against Kwon, who has absolutely zero clay form to go off in any capacity. Obviously, a lot of that is around Paire's lack of, obviously, tennis/effort/form over the last month due to COVID-19 and the associated side effects that have come with that. My suggestion there is probably to either avoid the match or maybe take Paire at a bookmaker that will refund in case of a retirement. The other option is there's perhaps value on Paire to win the first set there against Kwon. You feel like if he's going to give his, the best effort you're probably going to get from him is going to be in the first set there at an underdog price. So that might be something worth considering. And I've completely avoided Goffin versus Sinner. I've seen a lot of differing opinions on it going around over the last 48 hours. If it was a best of 3 set match, I'd probably be siding with Sinner. But look, the experience of Goffin over best of 5 does bring him back into it a little bit. Probably just going to be a bit of a watch and wait and have a little bit of a look at the conditions, because if it is raining to kick things off here, we will be seeing the roof shut on centre court. So we'll see what unfolds there. I've also popped up a DraftKings preview for a couple of selections that I like. A couple I think are overvalued, and one little upset alert, which might give you a little bit of a hint into one of my previews coming later on, as well as a summary there with a should-win list, I think, of about 13 players that I think should win today. Looking at the odds, says that's generally something that is recommended or suggested by a number of people to pop those previews up for people looking for a multi or a parlay for the first couple of days of action. Now, I think let's have a quick look to see if there's any questions here. We've got one from Trevor, who's read Sean's article, and that would be on Unibet if you want to take a look at that one, that underdogs don't normally strive here. Do you think the conditions change that? Look, I think they do a little bit. It's a bit of an unprecedented, and I hate using the term unprecedented because everyone is, but the conditions are obviously different here to what we've seen in the past. It's going to be really hard to gauge a number of things around conditions, form, fitness, players who skipped US Open versus players who played that North American swing and have come back. There's so many variables in that, and that's why you'll see probably over the first 2 to 4 days that my staking will very rarely go above that 2.5 unit selection, just because there are some unknowns here, and I feel like it would be a little bit reckless to go any higher than that. So look, I think the conditions do change it a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see, I guess, how these first couple of days unfold, and that's if we get any play on the outside courts, because I think if we've noticed anything so far from playing the French Open in September, it's that the weather is not very good. So we'll see what happens there. Now, look, as I've said there, look, I'll be writing a number of previews over the next couple of hours, but if you do have any questions, feel free to send me a tweet on Twitter at ace_previews. Otherwise, send me a direct message, email. I'll try and get to them as quickly as I can. Obviously, it's a bit of a busy day, and I'll hopefully be back a little bit later on to do potentially a live stream if the conditions are looking good and we've got a couple of matches to talk about. So that's all from me for now, and I'll come back a little bit later on and check in to see what's going on day one.